that's another thing that was addressed to David Martin Neal, that the start they're having to games. We were talking about hairdryers at half times and all that stuff. I may get the hairdryer out before the game starts to try and get them into action, because they've been starting really poorly in a lot of games.
They're so Jekyll and Hyde, Mick. That's if the Celtic side that turn up at Pittodrie approaches the game the same way as they did at Ibrox in the first half, anything can happen. If it's the second half Celtic that we saw at Ibrox, it should be a comfortable 3 points and back down the road. But there is no way of knowing with any sort of certainty what you're going to get from this Celtic side from one game to another. And that's why I think the big takeaway from Ibrox at the weekend was, I don't think either of these sides are strong enough, consistent enough to drag this back and win the title. I don't think either of them look like Premiership title winning material right now. And it's because of that. That said, if Celtic find that second half performance and extrapolate it out across the rest of the games for the rest of this season, yeah, they're right in it. But what's the chances of that happening?
Well, that's the thing. The one thing you would say about Celtic, I don't think you can fault their kind of their desire, their kind of grit, determination to even if it's not happening for them, to try and get a result. I mean, you look at the results on the Martin O'Neill, these late goals and all that stuff, and I know it's a sign of a team hanging on for grim life, but they are getting results that way. Can't continue, obviously, but if they can marry it up and get a performance as well as the determination, they might have a chance. I just think now the maths is going against them at the moment. I think they're I don't see where the goals are coming from to get the performances they need and get the results they need. Because Hearts, and the way the fixtures are falling with Hearts, I mean, if Hearts are getting this split with a kind of 7-point lead or something like that, they're almost there. They can afford a couple of slip-ups. Do you know what I
mean? We were saying in last night's show, Mick, if you look at that table again, for Hearts to break the 80 points barrier, they're just 5 wins and 2 draws from that. 5 wins. And the next 3 you would think are pretty winnable. It's Kelly, Livingston and Dundee.
If they get 3 wins at the next 4, they're only needing another 2 wins. I mean, I think if they get 3 wins at the next 4, that guarantees them getting to the last day of the season with a chance to win the league. Wow. That's the maths. That's the maths of it. I mean, what a prospect that could be if Celtic Rangers can hang on in there. A final day with the 3 of them going for it would be absolutely sensational, wouldn't it?
Yeah, if they're still in there at the end. I think you're right, Mick, and I wrote a column for online earlier on today mentioning exactly that. And it was, remember the line from Succession? Do you watch Succession? I'm guessing everybody's watched Succession.
Great show.
So remember, there's just an absolute golden scene when Logan Roy is sitting and he's basically explaining to Kendall Roy's eldest son why he was going to have to carry the can and become the scapegoat for some sort of major corporate corruption cover-up. Kendall looked a little bit upset about this. But then kind of says to his dad, all right, so he's basically accepting that that's his fate here and there's not much he can do about it. But says, well, you know, and desperate to get some sort of approval, he kind of sort of says, yeah, but, you know, okay, I accept this is how this plays out, but, you know, would you have considered me for and Logan Roy says, what, the top job? Well, I don't know, son. He says, look, you know, you're good, you're smart, but you're not a killer. You have to be a killer.
You're not a killer.
And that is the attitude that I think I'm seeing from Celtic, even though the form's not there, even though they're struggling, and I think there's a bit of unhappiness in general around the squad. See that instinct? That instinct is embedded in the squad, and that's what's been getting them through these games at critical moments. That instinct, if that instinct was anywhere near the Rangers team, they would have buried Celtic before half-time at the weekend. Yeah. And I think that's the crucial thing that might keep Celtic in the fight. That killer instinct, it's still there somewhere. And even the fact that he took off, we talk about, you know, the problems that Celtic have had in the windows. So he takes off a couple of the guys that they're new recruits in January at half-time. And what did he do in that second half? He didn't go to Thomas Chavanchara when he was in desperate need of one more goal. He went to James Forrest. It almost suggests to me as if Martin O'Neill has identified whatever that thing is that they've got in them, that's what's going to keep them in the fight here. And I think that Rangers fans, because there've been so much scar tissue that's accumulated over the last few years, I think they're still looking at that group of players, even though the faces might change in it. I think the general concern remains that do they have that instinct? has it in them to nail down results when it's really required. And then you look at Hearts, and Hearts are a side that even though they go to Ibrox and they get outplayed, you didn't see Derek McInnes pressing the panic button. He just said, right, do you know what? They were better than us on the day. It was a real hard venue. The fans get involved. But we'll be fine next week. And they just keep turning up, getting back in the bike and putting 3 points back in the board. So that tells me that killer instinct is really strong in the Hearts side as well.
That's the one question, though. I think we'll need to find out the Hearts. I mean,
when it goes down to the nitty-gritty.
They've answered it. If they have a wee trip up when it's not expected to a Dundee or a Kilmarnock, and then have another one quickly, what happens then? If it happens, listen. Every time they've lost this season, they bounce back with a victory. Answer the question straight away. But we're now into the real meat and drink of it now. 9 games to go. You can see the finishing line is almost in sight. Let's see that's when it's going to become, the pressure will get really interesting.
I think they're dealing with it, Mick. I think
so,
every time you looked at the last couple of games, Falkirk at Tynecastle, Aberdeen coming to Tynecastle, and you think, how's your bottle? How are you going to hold up? And by all accounts, against Aberdeen, and yes, I totally accept that this Aberdeen side has its problems, as we've discussed already. But I don't think they registered a shot and goal. And I think even though it was 1-0 towards the end of that game, Hearts were as comfortable as it's possible to be with 1-0 lead.
Yeah.
So that tells me that they're answering questions that have stumped Rangers.
Yeah.
Hearts continue to answer them.
And
But Celtic,
players coming back
because of,
but
yeah, look,
winning is the hardest thing to do in any sport. Winning, getting over the line is the hardest thing. I mean, I was watching the golf on Sunday night, and it was Shane Lowry who had a 4-shot lead before goals to go. And he shanked 2 in the water. You're like, he would put myself at the golf course. Well, I could have done that. But that's just pressure. That's just pressure. Winning is difficult. So the one thing Hearts look as though they're enjoying it. I mean, I watched the game at the weekend, and it was a decent up. I say Aberdeen, I thought were poor, but Hearts were just plugging away, and they seem to be relishing this fight. And maybe because they've got the least to lose as such, because they're not expected to be in there, and the pressure is off to an extent. But at some point, the pressure will be on, because we're thinking this is a chance.
I think the pressure's on, Mick. They know
that's what I'm saying. But at the moment, I still think it might be a case of it doesn't feel like they're under pressure. But it's going to be a point that they say we're not going to get a better chance to do this than this season, and that's when it might get a bit tight. And we've seen it. Listen, it happened to Rangers at the weekend at 2-0 up, and the 5-minute spell of pressure seemed to kind of take the legs away from Rangers. I mean, it literally that 5-minute spell and scored in that 5 minutes, and that was all they had. I mean, still, it wasn't great. I mean, people keep talking about the second half performance. It wasn't. It was the last 35 minutes performance.
Rangers were almost 3 up right at the start, weren't they?
Had 2 chances after half time.
Romans,
Celtic had a wee 5-minute spell, and Rangers wobbled, lost a goal, and then the manager made changes to try and combat it, and that actually had a worse effect on the team.
Yeah.
So we can talk about Celtic having the kind of grit and determination. They did right, and they come back and fair play to them. But Rangers had a major wobble and didn't cope with it. So so it's going to be it is going to be interesting.